When I decided to order the 17-inch Acer Nitro 5, I was expecting a thick, heavy chunk of a laptop to land on my desk. But when it arrived, I was quite surprised. It's actually slimmer and lighter than I imagined. When closed, it measures about 26mm thick from all sides. I do not have a scale at hand, but it's definitely not too heavy. If you are strong enough, you could lift this with one hand, not that I recommend doing so for long though. From the top, it looks like a regular Acer laptop, nothing flashy, but from the sides and especially from the back, it really starts to show its gamer personality. The rear vents have that classic aggressive design I like, and Acer added a nice red accent in the middle, stretching towards both vent sides. Even the bottom gets attention, with more breathing space for airflow, which is always welcome. The chassis is made entirely of plastic. I'm not sure the exact type of plastic, but I'm not a huge fan of its surface finish. It's slightly oily and loves to collect fingerprints. If that doesn't bother you, then you're fine. But if it does, then keep a microfiber cloth nearby because you'll be wiping it very often. Being a 17-inch laptop, it's big as expected. As a student or someone who is often on the move, this means that it's not going to be the easiest laptop to carry around. But the trade-off is worth it if you want that extra screen real estate for gaming or productivity. The hinges are sturdy and you can open the laptop with one hand if you try hard enough. I like the hinge mechanism, but I do worry a bit because the hinges are attached directly to the same plastic as the screen housing. Over time, that could mean cracks if you are not careful. And one last note, this particular model does not have an RGB keyboard. It's red backlit only. But if you want RGB, then you can find configurations with it for a little extra. Now let's talk about the display, because honestly, this is where my expectations and reality had a small meeting. The Nitro 5 I have here packs a massive 17-inch IPS panel running at 144Hz. Sounds great on paper, right? But here's one thing, while the refresh rate is indeed 144Hz, the response time is a bit lazy. I don't have fancy equipment to measure it down to milliseconds, but after checking online and just feeling it while gaming, I can tell you that it's not lightning fast. There's also a bit of backlight bleed. You wouldn't notice it on bright scenes, but put up a dark image, especially if you're watching a moody cinematic game cutscene, and boom, it's right there, glowing at you. Not a deal breaker, but it's something to note. Color accuracy, not the most precise one out there. I tried some photo edits and it's manageable. If you're serious about editing, you can always calibrate the display to get it closer to accurate. And nope, there's no HDR here and also no max switch, meaning you are stuck with NVIDIA Optimus unless you plug into an external monitor via HDMI. The good news is that it's anti-reflective, which actually makes a difference outdoors. I thought it's going to be too dim for outside use, but when I took it out, it was surprisingly usable. Viewing angles are also solid. Even at weird off-center angles, you can still see images clearly. Now here is one thing, when I'm gaming, I forget all of this. Once the game starts, I'm not thinking about backlight bleed or refresh rate, I'm just enjoying the game. And if you're like me and you want a big screen that's good enough without breaking the bank, you wouldn't have a problem with the Acer Nitro 5, trust me. Let's now talk about audio. This is where the Nitro 5 gave me one of its biggest headaches. First off, the speakers are downward firing, which means the sound bounces off the desk instead of hitting your ears directly. The volume is low, like, did I accidentally turn this down kind of low? I honestly think that the software just isn't taking full advantage of the speakers. I tried everything, like I downloaded every single audio driver from Acer's website, still the same low audio. I couldn't get the TSX Ultra to work with my laptop's own speakers. Even when I plugged it into headphones, the DTS software wouldn't let me tune the audio. My honest recommendation is that if you are gaming or watching movies, just connect external speakers or good headphones. It's worth it. Aside that, there was the driver war. After installing the audio driver, sometimes there's no sound at all. I realized that Acer's site had an outdated driver, so I grabbed newer ones from Realtek directly and it worked. But then Windows will sneakily revert back to the old driver over and over again. But I eventually beat it by going into Device Manager and manually forcing Windows to stick with the local driver I wanted. It took a bit of trial and error, but it worked. If you run into the same problem with your Acer Nitro 5, then you are welcome. Now let's get into the part that you probably came here for: performance. Specs on paper are one thing, but what happens when you actually hit that power button? This Nitro 5 is rocking an Intel Core i7-11800H, 8th core 16 threads and a boost clock that can hit up to 4.6 GHz. Pair that with an NVIDIA RTX 3050 Ti running at about 60 watts TGP and 16GB of DDR4 RAM, and on paper it's a solid mid-range gaming machine. But what does it mean to the real world? Well, for starters, everyday stuff like browsing, editing documents, watching videos, it's almost boringly smooth. The laptop is like yawning and saying, come on, give me something harder. But let's talk games. So I tested this laptop with a few games and this is what I found. First of all, I tried out Wuchang Falling Feathers and this was what happened. Honestly speaking, the game did struggle a bit. It's barely playable on high settings, manageable on medium settings, but very playable on low or custom settings. I do not blame the laptop for this, because it's an RTX 3050 rig with only 4GB of VRAM. The game is also very new, it was just released this 2025, and just like most games, patches would be released somewhere in the future which would make this game run even more efficiently. I'm going to let you see the benchmarks for yourself and judge, but then just so you know, it's able to run smoothly at ultra settings with ray tracing turned off. But with ray tracing enabled, you would most likely be able to run the game at ray tracing low settings only. That's if you want a smooth gameplay. I also tested out Spider-Man Miles Morales and I got plus or minus 30 FPS on high settings. I tried out other games that I did not include in this video. I tried out God of War, Ragnarok, and it could handle it very well. I was able to play it at high settings and I got about 40 FPS plus. I also played FIFA and then I got about 100 FPS. So it's actually a good laptop for playing games. It's not bad at all. But now let's talk TGP. This RTX 3050 Ti runs at 60 watts by default with a maximum of 75 watts. Just for those who do not know what TGP is, let me explain it in this simple way. Higher TGP equals more power to the GPU, which equals better performance. But here's the thing, the Nitro's cooling system can only handle so much heat, so Acer tuned it this way to keep the temperatures in check. Could you push it higher? Probably with some tweaks, but personally I would not recommend pushing these chassis too far with overclocking. With all that gaming, the fans definitely make their presence known. This is not a silent laptop under load. The CPU temperatures peak in the late 60s to the early 70s, whilst the GPU temperatures hover around the mid to late 70s. It's safe though, but you'll feel the heat coming out of the keyboard area after a little while of gaming. The good news is that the Nitro Sense software lets you kick the fans into a higher gear manually. If you are just browsing or doing light work, the fans stay whisper quiet. But if you are doing intensive work or playing games, you have the opportunity to manually up the fan speed. If you are into editing, then the i7-11800H handles 1080p and 4K editing in Premiere Pro decently well, especially if you keep your effects light. To test this, I created a short sequence which is made up of heavy transitions and motion graphics, just to test how the GPU can handle it at playback. It handles it almost well at full playback resolution, except for some one or two heavy transitions which it kinda struggles a bit. Half playback resolution also handles it almost perfectly except for the heavier transitions. But this is nothing that in-editing renders cannot fix. I'm not going to bother you with Photoshop because it handles it absolutely fine. The included Western Digital NVMe SSD is decently quick. It hits around 3000 megabytes per second read and 2700 megabytes per second write in Crystal Disk Manager. Not top tier, but you are not sitting down waiting for files to transfer. And yes, there's room for upgrades. You've got 2 SSD slots in total and one 2.5-inch SATA hard disk slot for expansion. The bottom line is that this Nitro 5 isn't trying to be the king of gaming laptops, but it's stable, it's capable, and it's reliable. If you stick to 1080p gaming and keep your settings reasonable, it will run almost anything you throw at it. Let's talk ports, because for a gaming laptop, having the right connections is just as important as what's inside. On the left side, you've got a Kensington lock port, an Ethernet port, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, and a combo headphone microphone jack. On the right side, you get an HDMI 2.1 port for hooking up an external monitor, another USB-A port, and a USB-C Thunderbolt port. Now, battery life on gaming laptops is always tricky. This Nitro 5 has a 57,488 mAh battery. And in my real world use, I got about 2 to 3 hours of doing light work like browsing, writing, or streaming videos. Once you start gaming though, you are looking at about an hour max, and that's without max brightness or turbo fan mode. If you want full performance while gaming, then you'll need to keep the laptop plugged in. Without the charger, performance drops noticeably, especially with the GPU, so keep that in mind. This unit came with a 180W charger, which is pretty much the sweet spot for this hardware. Charging from empty to full takes around 2 to 3 hours. And yes, the charger is a bit of a break, but that's the price we pay for gaming power on the go. You also get the Nitro Sense software, which can be opened with a dedicated button on the keyboard, which lets you monitor the CPU and GPU temperatures and change the keyboard backlight settings. On my model, it's red only, no RGB, but it's still adjustable in levels. The trackpad is decent for everyday use, though I would always recommend you use a mouse for gaming. The keyboard also feels good with nice travel, but it's not mechanical level tactile. The WASD keys are highlighted, which is a small but nice touch for gamers. Now, what's my take on this Acer Nitro 5? If you want a budget-friendly, upgradable gaming laptop with solid 1080p performance and a big display, the Nitro 5 AN517-54 is worth considering, especially if you can grab it on sale. I got mine on eBay and it was around 472 USD. That was minus shipping expenses though. It's not perfect, but for the price, it delivers where it counts. If you are more concerned about portability, premium build, or top tier display quality, you might want to look elsewhere. But for me, it's a good balance between price, performance, and features, as long as you know its limits.